Oceonigata, Jeff Ganohalidoh, Corntassel, Dagodoa, Shalagia Yatli, Egwenasai. So hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frontlines are Everywhere. And this is the podcast that really looks at our self-determining authority, our ways of relating to each other as Indigenous nations across Turtle Island and beyond. We're so pleased to have Nuskmata today on our podcast. And so welcome, Nuskmata. And I'm going to read a short bio to start us off, and then we'll start with some questions. Nuskmata, or Jacinda Mack, is an Indigenous thought leader, advocate, and land defender from the Nuxalk and Secwépemc Indigenous peoples. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Victoria and a master's degree in communications from York University in Toronto. Nuskmata was the spokesperson for the Northern Secwépemc Tribal Council following the 2014 Mount Poly mine disaster and was part of developing their Indigenous mining policy. She has served as a board member of the Initiative for Responsible Mining Assurance, a global initiative to raise standards for responsible mining. Nuskmata was an advisor for the Global Mining Tailings Review Committee and has worked with Amnesty International and Mining Watch Canada, as well as NGOs and Indigenous nations and communities to advocate for necessary reforms in the mining sector, ensuring that Indigenous rights and environmental protections are prioritized. In recognition of her international and community work, Nuskmata received the Andrew Thompson Award from the West Coast Environmental Law in 2024, which honors leaders who advocate for environmental justice and Indigenous land rights. Her work has been integral in pushing for systemic change in the mining industry and beyond. Currently, Nuskmata is the executive director of the Moccasin Footprint Society, an all-Indigenous charity that supports grassroots initiatives in the Nuxalk and Northern Secwépemc homelands. Under her leadership, the society focuses on promoting cultural, environmental, and community-based projects that strengthen Indigenous self-determination and land stewardship. Nuskmata lives on Nuxalk homelands, where she and her family built a home recently in their ancestral village of Nuskmata, and are currently challenging BC on the trespass notice they were issued last summer. So, Wado, thank you, Nuskmata, for being on our podcast. And would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Nuskmata. I am here on the banks of the Nuxalk River, or Anukhom, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
Just to start off our discussion, we usually talk about the notion of Indigenous internationalism. And Indigenous internationalism really entails the ways that we engage in diplomacies, treaty making, and solidarity across Turtle Island with other Indigenous nations, with plant nations, with animal nations, with the land and water itself. And so the question is really, what does Indigenous internationalism look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there are a lot of different streams of work that are happening in Indigenous communities and, internationally, globally. A lot of the work that we're focused on here in Nuxalk in my homelands right now really deals about rebuilding and activating and practicing and transitioning back to our sovereign ancestral governance. And that includes connecting with other potlatching nations along the coast and our relatives to the interior of us. So looking at food security, different trade networks, how do we work collaboratively in terms of our political and legal goals, and also how do we be a good relative within our own homelands, and how do we deal with things like free, prior, informed consent on a community basis so that we are unified and informed and working towards the same goals. So those are kind of a big, wide, big goals that we have, and that includes different things like our ceremonies and our language, our spiritual practices, and protecting what we have left here in Nuxalk. Just as part of my introduction, I'm down by the river here, which of course is the lifeblood, and this pole behind me is the Sputk pole, which represents welcoming back of the Ulagan. And we have a ceremony here on the riverbank every spring, and it's right in front of the river. And actually, last spring was the first time in over 20 years that we had a significant amount of Willigan in our river. And that's due to efforts on behalf of so many people and collaboration. And yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of the local scenery. And the horseflies are out today, so I might be a little distracted.
The Horsefly Nation is out in force today.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of crazy.
yeah. I wanted to talk to you about some of the challenges that you faced building a home on your own territory, on New Hope territory, which is also considered Crown land by the colonial authorities. And what are some of the struggles you've had on building this home? And I know recently you were issued a trespass notice by the government of BC. So what are some of the struggles you've had in basically being on your own home territory and being able to engage in day-to-day living?
Yeah, we started in 2020. So this was during, right after all the lockdowns happened. We started in June. And it was a month after I lost my partner, Richard Wright, from the Giksan. And the work that they did up there, up in Maddie Lee, as part of Wilplukuzi was just incredible. And that was part of their efforts to shut down a pipeline, the Prince Rupert Gas and Transmission Pipeline, which of course has reared its head again. And my time spent up there learning from them in Giksan was, really incredible. And I saw the value of, living on the land and being at the access points, being very strategic around your, not only your own community and nation engagement, but how you share that work out with the wider public and other nations who are watching, because all of our work is deeply connected. And so the work that we did to build a home in our village was to address the housing crisis and also to take a stand politically and legally within our own systems, to uphold our people and to encourage people to build throughout our homeland. So I think that's been a really big piece of the work that we've been focused on in the last 5 years. Well, last year on July 31st, 2024, we received a trespass order from the Ministry of Forests, and they cited the BC Heritage Conservation Act, which said that we were trespassing in our village and that it may be of Aboriginal use and importance. Like, it was just ridiculous.
Right.
And we're like, are you serious? Um, so we actually just met with the MLA for the North Coast, Tamara Davidson, who's also Haida, and explain to her like our laws and our governance remains intact, and that our lands are unceded, and that the only action that BC can take is to rescind that trespass order and establish a proper relationship with the Nuxalk Nation to understand and work through all of the tensions around land and governance, and all of the wealth that's been extracted and continues to be extracted out of our homelands, and that we are no longer going to agree to be confined to the reserves that were built for 250 people, and we're well over 10 times that population. So things are changing here.
That's good to hear. And I'm reminded when you're telling that or talking about that, I was reminded of the event of August 16th, 2021, when you actually issued an eviction notice to Juggernaut Exploration Limited, which is a Vancouver mining company. The eviction notice was issued on behalf of New Hope leadership, and the hereditary leadership stated, "We are the lawful authority with jurisdiction here. Juggernaut has never received consent through our ancestral government to operate here in New Hope sovereign territory. Tenures and permits issued by Canada and British Columbia are in violation of our human rights. You have been exploring here despite our opposition to your work. You are violating New Hope protocols and laws." And I thought that was such a powerful statement and an assertion of self-determining authority by New Hope. What has been the response to that eviction notice, and is that a continuing challenge, I guess, for not only mining companies but other companies coming onto New Hope territory?
Yeah, that was a really awesome summer. We had a lot of community building and excitement around the fact that people all agreed on one thing, and that included our nation and community members and the settler community here in Bella Coola around not wanting mining. And there's a lot of concern for our water, which we have excellent, beautiful, clean water here. You know, we drink from the glaciers in our mountains, but because of climate crisis, the glaciers are melting. So the deglaciation is opening up these new areas and tracts of land that the mining companies are hungry to get into. And that's a big concern. So we issued the eviction order. Actually, and one of the sites where they were drilling is this mountain, like right here behind me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, and
Right
when
at
we
a glacier? Was it right on a glacier or
no,
near
well,
a glacier?
the glaciers are mostly on the opposite side. I'll show you. A lot of the big glaciers are on our mountains on this side here,
Oh, I see.
which are
Okay.
melting. And
Yeah.
this particular mountain behind me, Cmewch, when we went up there, actually we did the eviction order and then they kept working, but we did it early in the morning so that we would hit the Toronto Stock Exchange at 9 a.m. Eastern, and had our press releases ready to go. And that day their stocks took a huge dive. People were paying attention to what was going on.
Wow.
So yeah, those types of decisions I think are, being strategic in that, and being ready to go with the story ready to go into the media, and having all of our allies ready to go to boost the story and to comment. I think just shows that bigger community and the concern around mining in general. But it was a snapshot of what we can do in a very short amount of time. And we ended up going to another citizen and I went to their AGM, and we thought that we were going to have to enter this, big room full of investors and have to like do a mic takeover and be really geek-san about our approach. But we were the only two who showed up, and we found out that it was a rubber stamp process. And so we were on
Ah,
a Zoom with the president, who obviously didn't know what he was doing because he fumbled through all the protocol and messed up all the procedures because they'd never done it before, in our opinion. So that was kind of funny. And we reissued the eviction order. And this went on for a couple of years of this back and forth. And finally, they made a statement that they would never be coming back here, not because they were recognizing that we have human rights and that we have jurisdiction in our unceded homelands, but because they said the gold was terrible. And I said, well, you know what? That's maybe even better, because then that will tell investors that we have crap gold and we will fight you if you come here, and like stay the hell out of Nuskmata. And I brought that to the oh gosh, I'm getting all excited here thinking about it, to the big what was it called? COP26 in Glasgow,
oh,
and
yes.
spoke on that there, and just shared that same message for mining companies to stay the hell out of our territory because they're not wanted here. And we're not one to mince words on that. Like, I know some places feel really compelled to say we're not against all mining. We're just against irresponsible mining. And with all the work that I've done and all the committees that I've sat on and all the advisors and international work, we have yet to see a responsible mining operation
Right.
that actually upholds human rights and has fair practices and all of that. So here in Nuxalk, we are learning from what happened at Mount Poly and saying that we don't want any mining here, full stop.
Excellent. What out for that? And you mentioned some allies that helped with this. Were they some of the neighboring nations or other folks in solidarity?
We received actually a lot of public support. Like, there was a lot of public, especially for people who are in their own struggles with mining companies. Like, Canadian mining companies go all over the world and say that they have excellent relationships with Indigenous peoples, and everything's just great here, which is a total lie. And so people who are dealing with Canadian mining companies were really appreciative of us ringing the bell on Juggernaut and making that stand, and sharing again the impacts from the Mount Poly mine disaster, which of course get into the water and the air and are loose in the world. So I think that also the connection with colonialism and coming in and totally extracting, I think those education pieces and narratives are being shared a lot more now today, certainly, than they were in 2014. So that's hopeful.
Yeah, it does give us some pause for hope. So let's go back to a not so great time in 2014, the Mount Poly mining disaster, one of the worst mining disasters in Canadian history. 26 billion liters of mine waste was released into the environment, including the headwaters of the salmon, of the Fraser River watershed. And it's interesting, it's been over 10 years and it seems like it's kind of disappeared from public discourse, from a lot of people's memories. But this is still having very real effects from what I've read and what I understand. Along the Fraser River, the disaster took place at the birthing waters of the salmon, as part of an interior rainforest in the mountains of the Caribou. And you even stated in 2014, my homeland was changed forever in 2014 when the Mount Poly mine disaster occurred. The mine's tailings dam collapsed, seriously threatening our wading salmon fishery and way of life. This is a legacy left to our children on the Fraser. We are still fighting for justice from the government and mine owner Imperial Metals, who have faced no penalties. What has happened since then? I know this has been over 10 years, but what are some of the things that I know this propelled you into a lot of direct action, but what are some of the things, the steps you've taken and some of the impacts that you've noticed due to this disaster?
I was really surprised after the disaster how much um, public engagement there was in reading things like the Mineral Tenure Act and um, people learning about the processes of mining, which for me was a bit of a surprise because it can be quite dry. The materials, it's a lot of blasting and grinding and, but it's like the biggest secret that people have never heard about. The mining industry is very wealthy and very powerful in terms of government, influence, and they're very connected into these, billionaire networks. And so when people started learning about that and asking questions and engaging and learning about how the water flows and on mine sites and waste storage and how the sewage from Vancouver gets trucked up to these mine sites and dumped in the tailings facilities, like people were shocked and outraged that they didn't know anything about this and that the oversight is basically with the mines themselves. So I think that really opened people's eyes to the impacts of it, which was really good for that awareness piece. And then it triggered things like this global mining tailings review, which brought different people from the mining sector, academics. I was the only community member there at the global summit for that, and I gave them hell at the table for that. I was like, where's South America? Where's Asia? Like, where's Africa? How come I'm the only person here? And so it was very driven by industry, and I really encouraged them to be brave and to make a real difference and put some really strong recommendations into the report. But in the end, they were, I think, heavily influenced by the deep pockets and the powerful people involved in the mining sector. So that was disappointing. But I think it also, like some of the impacts that I've seen in the work that I did in communities, was that it really um, gave communities information on like what I called the Canadian strategy around mining, and said, the reason why all of these mining companies, over 75% of the mining companies in the world are home based out of Canada, is because Canada has such slack regulation around it. And I've squared off with the Mining Association of Canada on their stuff, which is all like voluntary, and they give themselves awards, and it's just this like closed loop circle. So that was all very illuminating. But within the communities, I think the communities feeling more connected to each other and seeing the need for, connecting across these invisible imaginary borders that, the salmon don't follow and the water doesn't follow. I think that it broadened the conversation to include Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous people as real human beings with rights, and also for communities to really uphold their own responsibilities. And that's what we've really been focusing on. Is like, what is my responsibility as a citizen? What is our responsibility as the caretakers and good relatives of this land? What do we need to do to protect what we have, and to also stand with our neighbors who are doing that good work and learn from their work, and to bring that forward in a spirit of collaboration and in a spirit of like one voice pushing back on these capitalist, extractive, colonizing agendas, which, we are seeing explode in the headlines today, with people really fully realizing that now, that their liberties and their freedoms and their homes are being impacted. So it's quite a time to be witnessing this work.
Absolutely. Yeah. What for that. And it seems like it's truly a global movement. You had mentioned earlier that you did work in South Africa. It's also in Alaska, across Turtle Island. Has this become a kind of a global coalition, especially among Indigenous peoples?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the networks are starting to connect with each other. Like the work that's happening around mining is also looking into things like following the money, and looking into things like pension plans and education. The collaborations that are happening throughout, North and South, so-called America. Like I see a lot more people, especially through social media, connecting, places like what's happening with the Maori. And we have so much support here from the Maori, from Indigenous Australia, from Hawaii. We have followers in Africa. And so people are looking for solutions and support networks to feel like they're not alone in this work, because, of course, capitalism is very isolating, and often when you're the voice that's saying, hey, this isn't right, often you will be met with violence, or a dismissive attitude from people who either don't understand or have something to lose in terms of their own privilege within our homelands. So there's a lot of different fronts that are happening, and I think it's important to support lots of different kinds of work, from language, food sovereignty, land protection, like it's all connected. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For that. I remember back in 2014, shortly after this disaster, you had sent me what I think was one of the first of its kind. It was basically guidelines for responsible mining on Secwépemc territory. And so I was curious, what were some of the responses to these guidelines? And you said earlier, you kind of, told us earlier that there's no really responsible mining that's taking place either on your territory or across Turtle Island that you've seen. What were some of the responses to these sets of guidelines, and how has DRIPA, as it's being slowly implemented across Canada, how has that influenced maybe protections for territories from extractive industries?
we had a huge response to the Northern Secwépemc mining policy. I think there were like 50,000 downloads in the first 24 hours from,
Wow.
like Russia and the Philippines and like everywhere all over the world. And people were really curious. And one of the things I remember saying was like, this isn't a policy, this is law. Like this is the standard by which mines in our homelands need to follow. And it took all of the strongest mining legislation in the world that was put together by different Indigenous peoples, and put that into what we expected as the bare minimum for operations in our homeland. And, that was to guide the discussions going forward. And it was around that time, after that, I think 2015, I was in there in the emergency response for about 8 months. And then I totally burnt out and I had to step away because I was to the point where I was getting sick. And I remember being in Vancouver International Airport and at the gate, kind of walking, and then I just stopped and I couldn't remember if I was catching a flight or if I had just arrived to Vancouver. I was so
Oh, wow.
exhausted.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so I decided that I needed to switch gears and take some rest and focus on what I wanted to see in the world rather than constantly fighting what was coming at us, and to, kind of regroup and come back in a more creative and building perspective around what can we build, what are the pieces that we need to support us in transitioning. And so it's been a big wild adventure, traveling all over North America, Mexico, so, Africa, Europe, going to these meetings, and finally coming away feeling like the most powerful thing that we can do is learn our language and live our way of life and protect all that that includes, right? And to do that, not only to enjoy in this life, but for future generations, and to set up something that, what is the work that I can do? What is the path that I can clear here in this life for the next generation to carry that on? Because I see it in our young people, there's these bright lights, and they're smart and they care, and they're just like totally fed up with all the BS that we have to live with. And it's just very inspiring to me. So um, I think that response has been really great. And in terms of UNDRIP, I was thinking about this recently, and I was thinking about how, this declaration on the rights of Indigenous peoples, thinking of it as a framework for really guiding our collaboration with other Indigenous peoples, and really focusing first and foremost on getting our own house in order, and using it to work with neighboring nations, and to do that kind of inner work first, and then to come out with some really strong pieces of work, such as, us having declarations and following up on like protected area strategies and no-go zones, and like how do we start transitioning back over into our ancestral governance way of decision making. And I think that that's really strong. And like yeah, I'll go for a little walk here
Oh, sure.
to show you, like here in Nuskmata, we still live our traditional way of life. Like we still live by the seasons, and like right now we have spring salmon in the river, and sockeye is starting to come up, and then it'll be chum, and then pinks, and then coho in the fall. And we know what we're harvesting on the land right now, where soapberries have just kind of peaked, and there's lots of huckleberries. And so we live by those seasons, and a lot of the work that we do in informing our people about what's happening, we're really trying to relate back to what we've been raised up with. This is a very new Hulk. I don't know if that's backwards on the screen. Yeah.
No, it shows up well.
Yeah. So we're also working on signage, which is really funny because it's amazing how much people will listen to a sign, and how much it will like completely like de-escalate a situation. But yeah, and I just wanted to show you this too. So we're seeing a resurgence in our younger population, in our youth, in things of like art. So this
Oh,
is
beautiful.
this is a piece right by the river here, and this is a salmon design by Tukwini, Reuben Mack. And we're using these public spaces to really try to instill, pride. This is the female version by Anochimena Jade Hanus. And yeah, so, we've got, oh yeah, my cousin Ted, he's always got his smokehouse going. Like we still live by smokehouse and trade with our relatives in Celtic territories, and we stay up top with our carrier relatives up in Algacho. And, we're just really trying to focus on protecting our way of life, and to support community, and do things in a really new Hulk way, like not worrying so much about things like Robert's rules, and having to have things in a way that doesn't work for us or doesn't really make sense. And I'm just approaching, just want to make sure you can see what's happening here. This is my cousin Ted's, his house. Can you see the
Oh,
smoke?
nice. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's
So
going.
yeah. So that's full of spring salmon. And then this marker here is called a stween, and so that's a memorial marker of a double-headed sea serpent, a sea seal, and that's one of our family crests. So
Oh, wow. Yeah.
yeah, we're really just working hard on, uplifting our way of life and making that common knowledge and living by those values because we're just inundated here. The next big thing is like tourism, and tourism can be so extractive. And we have a lot of concerns around, you know, we don't want our beautiful valley to turn into a Whistler. I've been to and through different places where tourism is such an extractive industry, and we don't want our way of life impacted by that. Like we see it with the bear viewing here. We have tourists coming in who are not very bear aware, trying to get pictures with them like they're at a zoo or something, and they're putting themselves in danger, and they're also putting our bears in danger, right? A lot of
Yes.
bears are destroyed here because of tourism. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And that's so powerful the way you stated that, that realization you had about, you've traveled all over, you're reacting to a lot of the colonial positions. And one of the strongest things you can do is strengthen the language and strengthen those links to the land and the water. And so, yeah, that's such a powerful way to inspire, I think, future generations.
Yeah, it's been really fun too working with some of the young people who are really, you know, wanting to learn more and who want to look at that water. Isn't that beautiful? Sorry, I'm just so distracted how
Oh yeah,
beautiful our land is.
that, that is beautiful. That is
Like this
beautiful.
is this is what we're working so hard to protect. And I was up in a place called Fisheries Pool, giving up all the secrets now of where we go swimming. And it was completely packed with Nuxalk families and lots of young families and children this weekend. And it was really beautiful to see, people, they'll drift down the river in tubes or swim and just really enjoying the land. And that is such a big piece of summer for us here. And people dip in this river all year long, even when there's like snow and ice out, as part of our spiritual practice and to keep ourselves healthy. And, we have potlatches coming up this fall. And there's this real need and want for really reclaiming all of that and to be part of that and to understand that. And we have Nuxalk Radio that's encouraging the language use here. And we have Nuxalk Rising, which is a new kind of online-based movement to uplift our people and really just trying to instill that pride. I always tell people we survived from the strongest of the strong of our people. Less than 1% of our people survived smallpox. And here we are with our language intact and we're potlatching and we're building back in our villages, to try to give them that feeling, that bigger picture, but also to understand the bigger picture of colonialism that we're all living under. I was telling a non Indigenous friend of mine, like, you're colonized too. And she was really shocked to hear that. Like, what?
Yeah,
That's like one conversation they don't want to center themselves in is that colonialism piece, right? And it's so important to understand and to unpack. So we're just trying to, really share our stories and our life experiences to try to make it relevant for young people so that they know that they have support when it's, and to return to that. So that's really the
yeah,
focus. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so inspiring. And you mentioned New Hulk Rising and how it's an online project. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, we started last year. We had this idea that we wanted to uplift all the good work that was happening in the community. And as in many small Native communities, Facebook is one of the tools of communication where, people can get messages out quickly or contact people. And we were just seeing a lot of, negativity online, and there wasn't a lot of uh, time being given to all this good work that was happening in the community in various different departments of the nation by different individuals excelling and doing well. And we just wanted to put that good work out there. And so we created New Hulk Rising to share those stories and to feature different folks who are doing good work and to encourage them and to congratulate them in their hard work. And we've had a really positive response. We've covered especially with the Junior All Native Basketball Tournament and, graduates in the community, different good things that are happening, and also showing how we're uplifting our laws at Nuskmata Village in our land back effort, building our home. So just really featuring Nuxalk strength and good work.
Wonderful. And you've talked a lot about how you're helping to inspire other future generations. Who are some of the people that have inspired you over the years? Are people, or even kin, or even the salmon themselves? Yeah,
Yeah, so many people. My mom, of course, Bev Sellers. She's done an incredible amount of work and received honorary doctorate for making the world a better place. Like, I don't know if there's a higher award than that.
that's a pretty cool doctorate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the elders that raised me, my communities, the beauty of this land, I think is really, it gets me really emotional because there's so much for us to lose, but it's like really just focusing on the wealth and the strength and the connection that still exists here. Like everybody wants what we have. It's like they've taken so much already and they just keep coming for more and more. And it makes
Yeah,
me very upset.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. But you're finding ways to refuse those efforts and to really redirect that energy, right, from the nation into really positive things. So,
I watched one of your podcasts that said that everybody has to cry on your podcast. So,
oh, yeah. It's not a requirement, but
well, I think when you're talking about the land, it comes up, right?
it does. It does. Well, and that's one thing I love about this podcast is that people feel that they can express themselves in such a profound way and share really an intimate part of their lives, right? This is, an intimate part of your life, this river and this land. So,
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece is that connection. Like that, I always say that it's a love story, and every love story has its like high moments and its really challenging moments. And I had a moment the other day where I just felt so deeply like full of gratitude and humbled and really grateful for the work that I get to do and like that I get to do it with my people. And like I can't imagine a job that's more important than this. So this is the work. When we talk about the work in our communities, this is the work. And I just hope to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep learning as I go and to share that knowledge with others.
absolutely. Well, you mentioned your mom, and I met your mom recently. She was screening The Spirit Who Swims here in Victoria. And do you want to talk a little bit about that film and some of the reactions? I thought it was a really innovative film because it showed the salmon journey from kind of, the opening of the Fraser all the way through. But yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the film and maybe some of the struggles you've seen with salmon.
Yeah, the film is really beautiful, The Spirit Who Swims, and it's been winning awards in different film festivals and getting in. And I think that the power of that connection between Indigenous peoples and salmon is like one relationship, like obviously a very key relationship in many places and connects us from the coast into the interior and beyond. But it's like that wider community and being a good relative and seeing the river from the salmon's perspective. There's a lot of really beautiful underwater scenes and that connection of intergenerational learning and appreciation of salmon that we see at the end of the film up in the Duckhealth community of Nakasley. So I think that along the way and like all of the like the Mount Polly disaster is part of that story into the headwaters and overfishing, and it's a snapshot of where we are on the Fraser River and all of the communities that are impacted by that. And I think it's a real cautionary tale, but it's just also a beautiful love story. And I think that protecting that love is at the center of the work that we do.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. You're currently executive director of the Moccasin Footprint Society, and the Moccasin Footprint Society is really supporting grassroots solutions, takes action to make a difference in your home communities, really looking at your values and how they're grounded in ancient teachings and ways of life and based in healthy families, reciprocity, equity, and relationships and that share the wealth in a sustainable way. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work that you're doing with Moccasin Footprint Society?
Yes, well, The Spirit Who Swims is a project with Moccasin Footprint Society. So
Ah,
that
okay.
film is under our that umbrella, as well as New Hulk Rising and the all of the land back efforts and education that are happening in our village. And there was also just recently a culture camp, like a rediscovery type camp up in Secwépemc on Quesnel Lake, near where the Mount Poly mine disaster happened, and that's to raise education not only around the impacts but to protect the sacred sites that are there. So, Caribou Island is one of those areas that. Where the cultural camp is taking place, and with plans to work in collaboration with the Northern Secwepemc to build a full-time, year-round cultural center. And we've seen that in a lot of other nations as well. So it's just coming into alignment with other work that's already happening as part of the stewardship of that area. And yeah, the work that we're looking forward at Moccasin Footprint Society is a lot more like kind of deeper collaboration within the communities. And we show up in terms of labor that others are leading. So we will support with media, we'll support with the storytelling aspects, or we'll help with fundraising. And kind of, we like to say in potlatching, we're behind the curtain, and then we support everybody that's out front.
Sounds like an amazing organization. Yeah, Wado, for sharing that. Kind of nearing the end of the conversation, but one of the questions that I ask is kind of a bookend is, and I think you've embodied this just by being on your territory, but and even talking about land back. But as a question that kind of encompasses the past, present, and future, what does Indigenous liberation or freedom look like for you, or feel, or even feel like?
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking about this when we were building our home, and I was thinking that it's like it's to have our people living in our villages, like on our homelands, in our own homes that we built, speaking our language, eating our food, and in a peaceful way, enjoying the life and the this place that we were put, and to really embody that and to protect that for future generations. And I think that's going to look different in everybody's homelands. And here in Nukhalkalim, we're really working toward living that, and getting away from just like reading about it, or you know having it as a more of a mental exercise. So really living that, I think you get moments of it, and a lot of it is when you're time spent on the land, especially in community or with family, and you're doing things that you just kind of take for granted. You're using certain words, like we were picking soapberries the other day, and I was explaining how in Secwepemc you would say you spam the branches when you're picking soapberries, when you tap the branches and the berries drop. And if you didn't know that, then you would be picking them one by one, and you'd be out there for days trying to pick soapberries, right?
Right.
So these kind of things that we are just embodying and living, like those little pieces all add up, and to keep adding back to our treasure box, and to keep working with other people, because I feel like in our families we all hold a piece of that bigger collective knowledge, and it's all about putting that together and back into this shared knowledge and way of being, and to focus on that inner healing and that community healing, and get back to that strength and the very very Nukhalk way of living here in our homeland. So that's my dream for my people.
It's a beautiful dream. Uh, just a couple more questions. What are some current things we should be paying attention to? And I think you kind of drew our attention to mining and some of the destructive aspects of mining. But what are some things that maybe don't necessarily show up on a news cycle or even on Instagram that we should be paying attention to?
Um, oh geez, there's so many things. I think people should really pay attention to protecting water.
Yeah.
The chemical, like chlorination, and all of this thing around water, and like at Mount Poly, they're dumping directly into groundwater now, and you can't track that. They're dumping
Wow.
their waste into groundwater. So I think that's a really important piece to know about. Certainly water. I mean, salmon are such a keystone in so many different, human communities and aquatic ocean communities, and they feed the forest. I think that salmon is an issue that people should be really thinking about, and please don't eat farmed salmon ever. It's bad for
Yeah.
you and bad for the world. And just also like, um, it's just wild to me. It just blows my mind that what's happening in the United States right now, with concentration camps and abductions and um, like this is one of the biggest global and military powers on earth. Like people need to be paying attention to that because that spreads. What they're
Yeah.
doing in Palestine is absolutely atrocious, and it's I just don't even have words for what I'm seeing. Like where people can like get educated about that and to like listen and believe Indigenous peoples and get involved, and please don't sit back or stay silent. Like this is a really, really important time right now. And if it's too big to deal with the world issues, then just at least get on board with where you are locally and to, stand with the people who are doing that work because, man, it gets really hard out front, You're taking the brunt of everything and it's exhausting. And I see my colleagues and my friends and my family getting sick. And so I think that those pieces of collective community care and paying attention to what's going on in the world is really important right now.
Thank you for that. And last question: is there anything we didn't discuss that you would like to bring our attention to?
Oh, let me see. Hmm.
We covered quite a bit.
We did, yeah. I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I think I would just like to say also, if you haven't been paying attention to the Prince Rupert Gas and Transmission Line work that's happening up in the north with our Gitxsan and Tsimshian relatives, to please pay attention to that. That impacts everybody, and to, yeah, just support where you can, and that all of the work helps. And thank those
Absolutely.
who've been doing that.
Yes. Yeah, we had Colin Sutherland Wilson on a couple of episodes back, and he talked about this upcoming struggle over the Prince Rupert line, and we're going to see this continuing, right? So, absolutely. Yeah. Well, what a yeah.
Love goes out to all of them on the front lines, and I hope to get up there this summer. Of course, the Lachiap, the Gitxsan people are part of my heart forever, so I stand with them as well.
Well, what a Nuskmata. Thank you for all the amazing work you're doing and continue to do, and we'll stay in touch, and we'll find ways to support the work that you're doing. So, what a
So, thank you.